series, Where is Haleigh Cummings? And it's kind of bittersweet because we are just ending this series, and it feels like, it doesn't have a closing in this. But as a part of the closing or the end of this series, I wanted to share with you what I think it happened and how it happened. And it's one of the theories that's been out there for some time now, and I don't know if you heard about it, but I'll share that with you at the end of this video. We still have to go through some of the other things that Misty and her brother now are claiming, and an interesting character in this entire I don't know, I feel like there is so much drama, there is so much he said, she said in this disappearance that you never know how to even put it into words. And again, it's a very sad case. It's just one of those things that I wish that we could find out what really happened, and that we can finally close this chapter for the sake of Haleigh, and her memory. And it's again, we're just gonna go through some of the things that are going to wrap up the series. And again, if you haven't watched this series from the beginning and you're interested, I will have a link on the top of the screen that is going to pop up, and you can go through each one of the episodes and how this started, and the 911 call, the experts. And again, this is research based on the information that the police have shared on this case. There is a lot of information that they are not sharing, like a plea deal that they cut for Ronald Cummings when he got arrested, and there's a lot more information that the police is not sharing, and for good reasons. Of course, they are trying to find out what truly happened that night and where Haleigh is right now. So it makes sense that they cannot share that information with us, but this series was just based on that, the information that the police did share, and a lot of the opinions of different experts, doctors, psychologists, and profilers. I don't know, it's just a bunch of people that kind of study different parts of things that happened, and of course the social media circus that they created around themselves. And I'm talking about Ronald, I'm talking about Ronald's mom, or Haleigh's grandma, and also Misty, because they were the ones that, if you look up most of the interviews, they will be there for you to look at them and watch them on YouTube. So I watched them all that I could find, and of course, they kind of talk a lot, and that's how most of these experts were able to identify something and kind of go from there. So in the previous episode of this case, we talk about the arrest of Misty and Ronald Cummings, how Misty got sentenced for 25 years and Ronald for 15. Now, if you missed the last episode, I did go in depth on what happened, but long story short, they were investigated and they caught them on a series of videos where they were dealing drugs, and a lot of them. So apparently they go by weight, and Misty was the one who had the most, so she got 25 years. But Ronald also got himself a deal for sharing some information in what is presumed it's about what happened to Haleigh that night. And of course the police haven't really said much about the information that he shared, because again, this is an active investigation. It's not a closed case, so they're not sharing that. But Ronald did give information in exchange for the deal. shows that he agreed to collaborate or use in future cases, drug cases, and also in Haleigh's disappearance. So I am sure that he did share information about what he knows that happened that night that they're not sharing, but that's what I read about, that he did share some information about that too. That we also know that around that time the police said that this kind of changed from a kidnapping kind of case to a homicide investigation. So again, that kind of helps the idea that Ronald did share information about what happened to Haleigh or where Haleigh could be. Okay, the fact that they are not able to find the body, or that they haven't found it yet, it's of course something that it's going to stop the investigation, because they have no physical evidence, but they still have the collaboration of Ronald on this, and he was from the beginning a person of interest, even though he wasn't accused of anything. The police always had an idea that Misty was kind of holding information from them, that wasn't sharing everything, and that somehow Ronald was, he didn't know more than he was sharing. Okay, now before the police said that this wasn't a kidnapping and that they were investigating as a homicide or a murder kind of case, basically the idea is that at this point the police know that she's not alive. Okay, for whatever reason they know that she's not alive, and that is why they switch it from a kidnapping to that. Now before that, in a different police statement a few months back, the police already said that Haleigh being taken by a stranger was not likely. So Misty's story, they didn't believe it, and they know somehow, again not sharing how, but that wasn't the case here. So even before they switched this from a kidnapping to a murder kind of case, they also already knew that the story, Misty's story, was not true, and that they kind of knew that whoever took Haleigh did know her. Now, after Ronald got himself a deal, Misty and Tommy started making their own new story of what happened the night that Haleigh disappeared. According to Misty and Tommy, the guy that came and took Haleigh that night was Joe Overstreet. Now we talk about him in the last episode, but he is a cousin of Misty and Tommy, and he was visiting from Tennessee at the time that Haleigh disappeared. Apparently he came in the middle of the night looking for a gun that belonged to Ronald, and since he couldn't find it, he got really mad at them and took Haleigh and killed her. Now they also said that then Tommy and Joe took Haleigh tied to a cinder block and tossed her in the river. That story is what they were telling the police, and some people did believe this story because the cinder blocks was something that was seen in at the night that Haleigh disappeared. Remember that Misty mentioned that the door was being held by a cinder block. There's also quite a few of them in the Cummings home yard, so a lot of people did believe the part where she said that they dumped Haleigh there. Not necessarily that Joe did it, but it kind of started to make sense, the idea that yes, they did use that to throw Haleigh in the water. Now, what is interesting here is after they got busted for the drug dealing, Misty and Tommy both have the same story. According to my research, they did have the time to speak to each other while or right before they got sentenced and sent to jail. Now, I don't have specific time, but it has been said in different websites and different investigation kind of series. I also watched something like a series of videos on it that mentioned that they did talk before, they got sentenced or sent to jail. They also, when they also rode together in the same patrol car when they went in, pointed at the area where they dropped the body, and apparently the one that was there was Tommy. The one that went with Joe, if we go according to the theory or whatever the story that they're telling, Tommy was the one that went with Joe and dumped Haleigh's body in the river. Now, the police had a plan because they didn't actually believe the story all the way, or that it happened the way that they were saying. So what they did is they took some animal bones and they showed them to Misty and Tommy as a part of a plan to see if they were telling the truth. That is something that they are not sharing what they said at the time, Misty or Tommy. So the police, I couldn't find anything where the police was saying, okay, when we showed them the bones, this is what we saw, or this is what they said, or this is... So I don't know if that is part of what they are trying to keep as a secret, or not share with people, just to find out more of what truly happened that night. Now the police did an extensive search of the area but couldn't find Haleigh's body anywhere. Now, at this point, Misty's family immediately supported the idea of Joe taking Haleigh. Again, according to my research, they were always suspicious of Joe after Haleigh's disappearance because the family believed, Misty's family believed Joe was a child molester. Now, there is no proof of that, at least that I could find, okay? So, I mean, this is all alleged, and he did have a conviction, but I couldn't find specifically what it was on before. But according to what I read, he wasn't really registered as a child molester or is a, sexual predator or something like that. Now, Misty also claims that she was molested by Joe when she was a kid. But again, it kind of doesn't make sense that the police not, but the family is going with this theory, because if they knew that he was a child molester and that he molested Misty, I don't understand why they will welcome him to one of Misty's family member home, and why they even let him get close to Haleigh. I just don't get it, okay? As I mentioned in my last video, Joe was staying with Timmy and his wife, which is, according to my research again, Timmy is not one of the people that was investigated, or that, and I think that they were trying to protect a little bit more of his privacy. So I didn't find much information about Timmy, but according to my research, he is a family member or brother of Misty as well. And Joe was staying with Timmy and Chelsea, which is his wife again. They both mentioned that the morning of Haleigh disappearing, Joe was sleeping with his clothes on, and that wasn't something that it was usual for him. He usually just sleep in his underwear, but he would never sleep with his clothes on. Okay. Again, it doesn't mean anything to me, but okay. They also said that they had a van, and that after they went to bed, Joe could have taken the key. So he is unaccounted for at the time of Haleigh disappearance, okay? They do know that Joe went to bed when they went to bed, but they don't know if he got the key and used their van after they went to bed. They're not sure about that. Also, Chelsea, she mentions that there was a scratch this before, so I could have indicated that in fact Joe did use it that night. Again, everything is circumstantial, nothing that points exactly to the direction of him doing something to Haleigh. But the police, what they did is just took the van for, to look for evidence that just suggested that Joe used the van and, used it for something that, was Haleigh related, that they were trying to see if they could find some kind of DNA or something, but it came back with nothing, okay? So even if Joe did take the van and went to their house, and it just doesn't show that, Haleigh actually went in the van or that he took her anywhere. So Ronald and Joe apparently had a fight also before, and this is something that Misty shared with the police, and that they had a fight the night or before Haleigh disappeared. And what I don't understand about this, and I'm sharing it because it doesn't make sense to me, but maybe it does make sense to you, is that Ronald is saying that that didn't happen, that he didn't fight with Joe the day before, the night before, or right before Haleigh disappeared. So I don't understand why Misty would say that. I don't understand if Ronald is defending Joe or covering for Joe, or if this actually never happened and Misty is just making these things up to make Joe look bad. If you ask me, I honestly think that this guy, Joe, is probably not the best cousin and maybe even a bad guy, but if he in fact took Haleigh, if he actually did it, he would have had to put Haleigh somewhere, a vehicle, and the one that he was allegedly using was investigated and nothing came out of it. So it doesn't make sense what Misty and Tommy is saying at this point, because it doesn't check out. The police at this point, they are trying to make this story work, but nothing checks out, and they can't go just by the testimony of them without having any kind of proof. That it points, the proof that the police have at this point is that it didn't actually happen the way that Misty and Tommy said that happened that night. There is no way to prove it, and I just don't understand why. Well, they went through this entire ordeal, Joe being this way, and why didn't they call the police before? Why would they cover for this guy that is a child molester? And why would they cover for this guy that from the beginning? Because even if this was true, then Misty could have said something to Ronald, and this would implicate that Ronald is covering for Joe as well. You know what I mean? I don't think that Misty is smart enough to come up with this entire story of the kidnapping of that night by herself. I think that if Joe in fact did take her, she would have called Ronald at least, and they could have called the police at that time. I don't understand why they would feel the need to cover for this guy. It doesn't point to any kind of the right direction, in my opinion. Now, so nothing at this point puts Joe as the kidnapper. There's no evidence in the way that they described it. They checked for the evidence and nothing was there. So that kind of concludes all the stories that the closest people to Haleigh told about what happened that night. But where is Haleigh? I think that's what we all want to know. And okay, if you ask me today, I think it was an accident. Okay, don't get mad at me. I will explain why at the end, but of course this is just a theory, okay? was an accident that was covered because of their illegal activity that this family had going on at the time. Now, of course, you have all the same information that I have and that I share with you in this series of videos, so I'm sure you have your own theory and you're welcome to have it, but I hope we can go through a few of the other things that were said. There are a lot of theories out there that say that Misty either left for a party and took the kids, and Haleigh somehow got a hold of drugs and overdose. So at the party everyone freaked out and that they put her somewhere, they threw her somewhere, they got rid of the body. Now that would implicate a lot of people at a party, and usually somebody talks. So in my opinion, that's not very likely, okay, that she left. And there's a lot of little details that kind of point to that direction, like she wasn't even there that night, but listen, she was cleaning, she was doing laundry. There's a lot of things that show that she was actually home, so I don't think that she left for that party. So that's one theory. Some other people have mentioned that Haleigh lost her inhaler on that same night, and that maybe in one of those parties somebody put drugs into the inhaler to have fun and do drugs with it, and then when Haleigh actually needed it, they, either Ronald or Misty gave it to her without knowing the drugs were inside and she overdosed, okay? Well, my theory, of course, is I have a hypothesis, and it's based only on the information that I got, that it's, publicly obtained. I don't have access to police files, and my opinion does not imply that Ronald Cummings is a criminal guilty of crimes that have to do with Haleigh Cummings disappearance, because I cannot convict a person. This just only a court can do that. So keep in mind, this is just my personal opinion and theory. There's a lot of people that take these theories the wrong way, and they leave horrible comments about it. So I mean, this is the mystery theory, and this is the theory that I believe could have happened. I mean, this is an area that I would believe, so that's why I decided to share it. That doesn't make it true. It makes it my opinion, okay? Now, I think that something happened to Haleigh just before, or, right after Ronald went to work. I do believe that Haleigh was alive that Monday, because we all know that how much Ronald had to push Misty to watch the kids that night. So I do believe that she was alive that Monday. But something happened, right before Ronald left, or right after Ronald left to go to work. My gut feeling is that it happened before he left to go to work. That something happened before he did leave. Now, the most likely possibility, in my opinion, is that Haleigh ingested some kind of drug that Ronald had, that he was stealing or selling or consuming for himself. And that happened, in my opinion, before 8:30 p.m. And for some reason, they either knew that she did ingest that and didn't think it was going to do anything to her. Maybe she fell asleep, and when you overdose, well, according to the research that I made, I have no idea. I've never seen, and I don't want to see anybody overdose in my lifetime, please and thank you. But according to the research that I've done, it's very likely, especially if you're a kid, anything is too much. Anything can be an overdose for you. And Haleigh, because of a medical reason, means that she wouldn't need that much drugs to make her overdose. So it is likely that she was having some kind of a seizure, or she was having convulsions, and she started to vomit, after the fact. So maybe she did take drugs. And of course she didn't do it on purpose. She was a kid. She was 5 years old. Maybe, she found it somewhere. She thought it was a candy or something. And maybe she fell asleep. That's what I think it happened before Ronald left, or right around that time. So Misty put her to bed, and then probably she went to check on her, and she started having this kind of seizures, and started to throw up. And that would explain why Misty felt the need to wash her blanket, and even the pink shirt that she claims that Haleigh was wearing the night that she disappeared. Okay, so leaving that dirty, the police could have examined that and matched it to Haleigh and some kind of drugs. So I think that they kind of realized that they were having a big problem then. I do think that this happened before he left, and I do think he knew when he left to go to work. But I also think that he didn't think it was going to be a big deal, okay? That this could have been something that, she's gonna sleep it off and she'll be fine. Now, let's go back to that night and what they said happened at 8:30 p.m. It is reported that Ronald, some people call him Ronnie, and I don't know why I have in my notes Ronnie. Ronald and Misty had an argument that night at around 8:30 p.m. He stepped outside of his work building to handle the call, okay? That's according to some witnesses. Then Misty turned her phone off, resulting in Ronald, remember, that he started calling repeatedly and she wouldn't pick up the phone. And then he supposedly called Tommy in desperation to go check on her, and Tommy drives over, knocks on the door, but Misty doesn't answer. Now, I don't think that's what actually happened, and we're realizing after Tommy went to jail, and Misty too, that they're changing this story, and that Tommy is, at that point placing himself in, the home that night. But in my opinion, Ronald did have that argument with Misty, and he can't get through to her. He gets worried. That doesn't make that much sense. In my opinion, the heated discussion between Ronald and Misty at 8:30 was Misty telling him that Haleigh is dead, and that, he started cussing and freaking out and trying to figure out what to do at this point because he doesn't want to call the police. Of course, those are his drugs, and, the drugs that he had at his home that he was dealing or consuming, or, whatever the case may be. Accidentally, Haleigh took them. But how is he going to get away with that? Haleigh's already dead. What are they gonna do? So I'm sure that he did come up with this plan, that they had to get rid of Haleigh's body. So they need to be sure that it can be found and analyzed for drugs. So he thought that it would be a good idea to dump her in the river with a heavy brick, and then the alligators, of course, will take care of her. Now, I do believe that at the time they also came up with the idea of getting the blanket and the clothes and everything that was dirty and put it in the washer. Because again, we don't want to explain why she vomited and why she had drugs in her system, right? And then I'm pretty sure, or I believe, that Ronald ask Misty to turn off the phone because he doesn't want her to talk to anybody else until he gets there. I also believe that he was the one who called Tommy, but instead of asking to go check on Misty, is because he wanted to go help Misty get rid of the body. Remember that Tommy was involved in the drug dealing, and that's why he was convicted, and that's why he's still in jail. Now, they could have used a blanket, and carry her into their own cars, so whatever. It could be Tommy's, it could be Misty, and if they clean, her up and they don't have any kind of fluids or anything that would indicate that she was dead at the time, that would make sense to just clean her and take her somewhere. So there's no blood or no fluids that would indicate that they took a body. It made sense to me that they will take her, if in fact this happened, that they would take her in a car that she would use, because I'm sure the police did go through their cars and the vehicles around them, and they look for evidence. But if there's no blood or no fluids or anything indicating that she was dead in that specific vehicle, you know what I mean? She more than likely did ride with them in those vehicles, so the DNA was going to be there for the police to find. So, what I think it happened, he called Tommy, and he did go and took care of Haleigh's body. They dumped it in the river, and Ronald finished his shift, so he can keep an alibi very solid, So he stops at a convenience store, according to the records of that night, and so he can be seen on camera with the time recorded, So he arrives at the house about 25 minutes later. Again, we're seeing here that if this was the case, how Misty mentioned that she was cleaning the house, it would make sense that she was cleaning the house of the drugs that they had in the house. And again, if this happens, or if Haleigh actually did take those drugs before Ronald left for work, that would be a long time. So Misty could clean the entire house and make sure that there's no any kind of liquid or vomit or anything from Haleigh. At the same time that the clothes is clean, so they can't. There is no blood in here. You know what I mean? They didn't stab her. They didn't do anything. Again, we're talking about theory here. So the police is not going to find any of that evidence. And if they washed the clothes, according to the research that I made, the drugs could have been, been clean, and the police wouldn't be able to find it if that's what was the case. If it was blood, it's a different story. Even if you wash the clothes, it's still gonna show up. Again, this is what I know according to the research that I made. I am not an expert. I don't go through crime scenes, and I do not wish to go through crime scenes. One thing is to investigate, and another very sad thing is to be there and try to do all this stuff. So, I think they didn't think through, actually. The time they, in my opinion, that they made a mistake was at the time that saying that Misty got up at 3 a.m. and finding Haleigh gone and the door propped open. And that would go with the theory that, this is something that they created themselves. This is not something that happened. This is a scenario that they created, and that's why there are so many inconsistencies in the 911 call that we went through the other day. I also believe that, they had to come up with a story very quickly, so they did the best that they could. And that is why, it doesn't make sense that she went to the bathroom that is in the hallway instead of going the one that is in the master bedroom. It doesn't make sense that the door was propped open. It doesn't make sense that there is no evidence that anybody else was there. I don't think that they thought that through enough to make sense. But what it does make sense on Ronald's perspective, in my opinion, is that he didn't want her to call 911 until he was in, the house, because he needs to make sure that she has her story straight. They came up with the story within a few hours, so he needed to be there. But so she would call 911, and he'd be there to kind of push her to say whatever he wanted to say, and to go along with the story that he came up with in his mind. Now Ronald comes to the house. He probably did put the cinder block there to prop open the door for whatever reason. And then he tells Misty to make the call to 911 while he is there. So there's no room for, saying something different that whatever Misty will say, because they're gonna interview them separately. So he needs to make sure that he's in the same page with Misty, right? Now, of course, Misty calls 911 and gives the scenario that she was coached by Ronald, again, in this theory that we're going with. And that is why he's acting upset and stressed. And, the whole scene that he made on the 911 call. Now, neither Misty or Ronald ever searched for Haleigh. And that is something that I mentioned, and somebody got really mad at me. Like, really mad at me. I don't know if you guys saw that comment, but there was somebody saying that I had no idea what I was talking about, and that it wouldn't make sense that Haleigh was wandering around. But what I'm saying is that doesn't make sense to me personally, is that Misty and Ronald never searched the area for Haleigh. They're in the house. If I was the mom or that little girl, I'd be looking around. You call 911. I'm gonna go and search the area just to make sure that she didn't wander off, that she didn't, I don't know, that maybe she was sleepwalking, or they just don't even think about it, Also, that area is full of, well, not full, but there's a lot of sex predators registered to that area. So they didn't think of that either. I think that at that time, the first thing that would come to my mind is maybe she did leave, maybe she did, something happened. And even though she was a small girl, maybe she did put the thing on to keep the door open. Maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody was coaching her. Maybe they're close, maybe they're walking, maybe they're leaving, maybe they're, after the Elizabeth Smart story, how the kidnapper took her and have her walk around her neighborhood, and it's, if you, I don't know, I just feel like it's an instinct as a parent to go look for your kid. If they're not there, maybe somebody did take her, maybe she wandered off. Whatever the case may be, wouldn't you be looking around the area? Like, under every rock that is in your yard, bush, plant, whatever, wouldn't you be looking for your little girl? I understand that this lady that was, really upset at me, she had a problem. Well, she mentioned that her sister lost her daughter. She didn't mention how, but I don't think this is the kind of video that you should be listening to if you have that problem, But it kind of made her feel like I was, I don't know, not making sense because of thinking that she could have wandered off. I don't know. Again, it's kind of I think it's one of my reflex whenever I don't see my kids. I would, look under the bed, and I don't know I would do that. So, and again, they didn't do that. They stay there talking to the 911 call, the dispatcher. So, in my opinion, everything looks very staged. I do think it was an accident. I don't know. Everything points to the fact that, Ronald was abusive to her kids and to Misty, and I think that kind of threw everyone off and got them thinking, or got us thinking, that maybe he did kill her in an accident, hit her the wrong way or whatever. But again, I don't think that's a scenario that I would go for. I think that was one of the possible ones, and that's one of the scenarios that was investigated the most. But having so many possibilities of what could have happened to Haleigh that night is just what I think it made it almost impossible to come up with that theory right away, and it's taking them this long to find out. And even today they don't know, they don't have proof, and they don't have any convictions or arrests or anything made on this case today on April 2018. But we know that the police was investigating Ronald and Misty right before Haleigh disappeared, and that even in one of the interviews that they had, there was this officer that was saying that, the drug bust thing was a parallel investigation, but that he was hoping that both of these investigations will kind of merge into one at some point. I think the police already suspected something like this could have happened to Haleigh, that this could have been just a really bad accident that nobody wanted to say anything about, because of course they don't want to say that they had drugs. And if right after, Haleigh, in the scenario that Haleigh did take these drugs, if they'd taken her to a hospital and they didn't, just ignore it completely, maybe she'd be alive today, But they would have to answer so many questions about how she got a hold of that, and they would have had to leave the house right away. They wouldn't have the time to clean everything and to get rid of the drugs that they were dealing or consuming. And I honestly think that they didn't think that it was going to be what was going to kill her. I honestly believe that Misty did put her to sleep, and they thought that she was going to sleep it off, but then all of this happened and they tried to cover it as best as they could. I also think that Ronald did call his mom, and that is why she made it there so quickly. They mentioned that according to where she was at to the home, and again, there's kind of a dispute of where she was living, but if she did in fact leave her house at the time that Ronald called her, at the same time that Misty was talking to the 911 call, it would mean that in order to make it in 5 minutes, she would have to drive 180 miles an hour to make it there on time, and I don't think she could have done that. I think it's silly to think of that. And if she lived far away, how other people believe that, when she lived at the time, not even 180 miles an hour would have helped her to make it there in 5 minutes from her home to there. So I do think that she knew what they were going to say, and I do believe that Ronald did call Tommy, and that Ronald's mom, I think that she called Tommy as well because she was trying to help and give ideas. And again, now everything starts to make sense in my mind. If that was the case, if that was the scenario, and so that would explain why she called, Ronald's mom called Tommy. Why Ronald called Tommy that night. It wasn't about checking on so much on Misty, but it was more about, helping also think that Misty didn't pass the polygraph because I don't, in my mind, I don't think she was the one who took Haleigh to the river and got rid of her. I think that most likely was Tommy while she was cleaning the trailer and getting rid of the drugs. I do believe that it was kind of a thing that they had to do as a team. Ronald, Tommy, and Misty, because they were all implicated in the drug dealing business. And, the mom, she was probably not implicated, Ronald's mom. But she knew that Ronald was doing that. She was probably even getting some benefit from it. And when Ronald told her that this was an accident, she just wanted to help her son, to make it go away, even though, I'm sure she loved her granddaughter. I think the police has the resources and bright minds, honestly, to solve this case, and I'm 100% sure that they have a theory they believe in what really happened to Haleigh at this point. But the police, they're not magicians, and they cannot fabricate something to implicate the people that they believe in their heart did this to Haleigh. I believe that they're waiting for someone to speak up, to say something, so they can investigate what truly happened and find the evidence, because if somebody points them in the right direction, they can find evidence. A cell tower pointing to the time where, somebody says that Tommy dumped the body there. Maybe they can even try to find somebody who was in the area at that specific time. Now, right now, they don't have that because they don't have any clues or tips or things that would actually point to the truth. And I don't think that either Tommy or Misty want to talk because they're in jail. They're serving time. Even if they say, okay, we did it, even if they got a deal for themselves, I don't think that it's going to end well either. You know what I mean? They're gonna get more time to spend in jail, and it's going to be on something that it's going to be way worse. That took a lot of money to investigate something that they shouldn't have done it in the first place, because it was never a kidnapping case. That they use resources to look for Haleigh when actually something else completely different happened to Haleigh. I don't think Misty or Tommy want to clear their conscience. And I do believe that somehow Ronald is trying to wash his hands, be like, okay, trying to say, I wasn't home. They probably kill her, and I do know that they kill her. And, he's just trying to get himself a deal and not implicate himself in this. Most likely, in a way that it will give him even more time. So that's why he actually probably did share information about Haleigh's case. And, according to what everyone is saying, that's how he got himself a deal. So, to finish the story, I think that it was a little bit of negligence mixed with bad decisions on Ronald's part, if that is what it actually happened. Again, this is a puzzling kind of idea that, this could have happened to Haleigh. But nothing in this theory that, again, this is something that I believe, but there's other people that believe this theory as well. I remember reading about it in a website, I think it's Daily Profiler or something like that, they talk about this theory there. And but do you see what I see? I mean, sense to you in your head now that we know everything that really happened, because we have record of it, you know, the calls, the implication of Tommy, the implication of the mother getting there so quickly, the idea that the mother, you know, Ronald's mom, I think her name's Teresa Neves, you know, she was there so quickly, and that she did call Tommy that night, that Teresa in fact was pretty happy with the idea of them getting married, you know, and the idea that she was reaping the benefits of the Haleigh's disappearance as far as money and the interviews that Ronald was given and Misty was given as well. Why? This would explain why she was defending Misty so much, because she believed, well, I believe that she believed that Misty was the weak link here. I believe that Misty didn't pass a polygraph when they asked her, you know, if she knew where Haleigh was, because she knows what they told her, you know, that they put her in the river, but she wasn't actually there. That, you know, she was not 100%, you know, honest when she said that she didn't know who took Haleigh, because again, nobody took her. They just dumped her. You know, this wasn't a kidnapping to start. You know how everything starts to make sense now? In my head, of course. So, for me, this is the likely theory that I would go with, because it would explain everything that we talk about in this series of videos. I just feel like the negligence of Ronald doing drugs and selling them and dealing and having them around the house, the guns being unlocked in different areas of the house where the kids can, you know, really get into, that just shows you that they probably had drugs lying around. Again, negligence on his part. I don't believe that Ronald hated his daughter. I don't believe that he planned to finish her life this way, or I truly believe that he is ignorant in a lot of ways. That he was probably raised in a way that not everyone is raised, let's say it that way, and that he probably saw things normal that are not really normal. But if you see them every day, if that's what your parents do, if that's what your family does, if that's what your parents' friends do, then that becomes your new normal, you know? If it's normal for you to get home and just take off your shoes, put some slippers and sit in front of the TV, then probably that's what is going to be normal to your kids. And again, even if it's some kind of odd behavior, if you see it from your parents, or if you see it from the people that you're raised around, or the kind of friends that you have around, I am not excusing Ronald for being a, you know, negligent parent. I'm not doing that. I don't think anybody in this earth deserves to be judged as a parent, because I believe that we are a result of what happens to us. There is some unbelievably amazing people in this world that it doesn't matter where they've been raised or how they've been raised, they change their lives for the better. But that's not the case for everyone. And again, I'm not excusing him or Misty, which I talk about how I feel about Misty. I feel like she's also a victim of, you know, her circumstances, her parents, her family, and the lifestyle that she chose, because she just didn't know better. She didn't think she could do better, so that's what she wanted to do in order to survive. Listen, this is sad all around, and what I believe happened to Haleigh is just the theory of a sad night, of something that shouldn't have happened. And I'm not here to judge anybody or say that they should have done this or should have done that. I'm just saying that we have to put into perspective the decisions that we make as people, as a mom, as a dad, as a human being, every single day. And understand that everything we do will have consequences for us and for our family, our kids. So, sometimes it will take every single bit of will and discipline to do the right thing. But we have to understand that when we are parents, we're not only making good decisions for ourselves, but we're also making good decisions for our kids, to set a good example, to show them a better way, so I'm sure we're all going to fail one way or another. I'm sure that we're all going to make mistakes as parents. But I truly hope in my heart that the mistakes that we make can be fixed and are not as sad and as life-changing as Haleigh's case. I guess I just want to encourage whoever is out there and is dealing with a lifestyle that they're not happy with, maybe that they're doing drugs or they are doing something that you know is not good for you or your family, to think about it and try to make a change if that's what you really want and if that's what you really think it's best for you and your family. Negligence is one of those things that I wish that we could eradicate from this world. Well, among other things. I think cancer should be there too. But it breaks my heart to think that there are kids out there that are going through a cycle of abuse or negligence from the people that are supposed to love them and care for them more than anybody in this world. So even though this is a sad case and we still don't know what truly happened to Haleigh, I hope that we can all get something out of this, and that will make us think. I think make us think it's a good thing. Nowadays we're so want to get entertained by our phones, by our computers, videos, that sometimes we don't have time to be with ourselves and our minds and truly think what is good for us, what we want to do with our lives, and what other people want to tell us what to do. I wish you could look inside of you and, at least put things into perspective. And I hope that one day that this can be solved, that there is a shine, that like a little light that will show the police the way to fix this. Not to fix it, but to solve it. But there's no fixing. There's nothing that we can do to change what happened that night, but I believe that Haleigh deserves justice. She deserves to be remembered in a different way, and not the girl that we have no idea what happened to her that night. Anyways, I'm gonna finish this video because I can talk about this all day, but I'm sure you'll have better things to do with your time. So, stay tuned. I'm gonna do a few short cases, or short hour-long cases that I've been working on, and share with you for the next weeks. I don't know if I'm gonna do once a week, twice a week. I don't know, but those are cases that I've researched, and I need to read about them once again, all my notes and everything, to share that with you. But then I'm gonna go into some of the requests that you guys have. I'm not gonna jump into them right away because most of the cases that you guys suggested are very long cases. Probably longer than this one, some of them. And I feel like we all need to share or listen about cases that have been solved and that we know who did it, and that we can, I don't know, find a closing. Because if I do another long case like this one, when there's no closing to the case, or there's no ending, I just think that it would be too much, especially after so many weeks going through this case. Again, I'm still working on the idea of a podcast where I'm just going to do these cases in a normal voice. Not normal because I'm too loud, but soft-spoken kind of way, normal kind of way. And that is in the works. I swear I want to do it, but I'm so not good with technology that everything, when they put letters together and they try to call it something like, you'll have an RSS feed, and that's Chinese to me, and I don't speak Chinese. So if you have an article, or if you know somebody, or if you know somewhere I can go where people can explain it to me in an easier way, please share a link in the comments. I would love to read it. I need to continue to read about it, to share that, because I do get a lot for whispering. Again, you guys want to hear whispering, most of you guys, so I do it for most of you, and I don't mind. I actually like it. But I know there's people that want the podcast and that have been asking almost in every video for it. So please, if you are a tech-savvy kind of guy or girl, I would appreciate the help, okay? Anyways, thanks again for watching this video, and I will see you on my next one.